Hi there, Henry from 911 Virgin, Porsche people in Uxbridge. Welcome to another video. In the last video, we went round the 964 and I said we're going to get the bodywork sorted out on it, get it restored. And here we are. We're in our body shop, Auto Body Technics, in the glorious town of Slough. And I'm with Bob.
Hi, Henry.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
So, Bob is from Auto Body Technics, and he works here with his brother Nick. Nick's quite camera shy, so Bob is the media face of Auto Body Technics. The good-looking guy, the knowledgeable guy. Nick is like the silent ninja painter. You'd never see him, he's getting out. And anyway, so little bit about Auto Body Technics and about yourself. So you've been doing this, what, couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been doing it a couple of weeks, about 25 years now.
So because Auto Body Technics is owned by yourself and your brother Nick?
That's mine and Nick's.
Okay, Nick a bit older than you?
Nick's a little bit older than me. He's been doing it a bit longer than me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started Auto Body Technic, we started 16 years ago. Prior to that, we've always been together for the last 25 years.
Yeah, and we've been using you for, I'll say 10 years, but it's probably
been a bit longer
than that. It usually is, because as you get older, the years sort of, yeah. And you are pretty, I wouldn't say you're entirely exclusively Porsche, because we have a little Fiat 500 behind there, but primarily you are now Porsche, aren't you?
Most of our work is Porsche. We are quite recognised in the Porsche world.
Yeah.
Of doing a good job on these.
And so, I mean, for us, most of the work you do is you'll do cosmetic paint work. So we might have bumper painted, some scratches, marks taken out of cars. But you also do get involved in some more involved kind of restoration type jobs as well, don't you?
Yeah, that's right, Henry. We'll take all aspects of the job on. So like you said, we start with your work, it's mostly cosmetic, stone chips, scuff on a bumper, and then we'll take on full restorations, new sections, body sections. So yeah, we'll take it all on.
And you have a little project of your own that you've undertaken or is in the process of being done, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm building one for myself. It's been something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And I finally got the opportunity to do it. So
we probably we'll have a look at that. Before we go today, we'll have a very quick peek. I'll give you a sneak preview of that. It started off life as a...
started life off as it is a 89 3.2 Carrera.
Yeah.
It's seen better days, but since then we've stripped it all back down to a shell. Had it sandblasted. So
it sounds terrible. It had a little fire, but that sounds like, I mean, it had a little in the side. It had a little, but anyway, we'll do that. Yeah. We'll do that as a before we go. We'll have a quick peek at that, and then we'll. So for this car, the car essentially is it's all in one piece.
Yep.
It's not damaged. But I've had it for a long time. And the paintwork's starting to go in places. We've got some sort of dent marks. And also, I want to strip the car down and we want to check it's nice and straight. And so we're starting with a good platform and then build it up from there. So I can see at the moment that we've got bumpers off the car. So how far are you going to strip this car down then?
So we've decided to go to a point where we're going to take the wings off, doors off. So essentially we got a body shell there.
Yeah. Obviously glass out.
Glass out will come out.
Yeah. So explain to me on this car why we're taking the wings off the car.
We want to be able to check behind this seal down here. They usually corrode behind there. So we do want to check behind that. At some point in its life, the wheels are probably rubbed on the inner wheel arch, so we've got a little bit of paint come off there.
Okay, yeah.
So while we're doing that, we'll make all the wheel arch look nice and clean and tidy in there.
So it gives you good access to get in there. Because of course on these 911s, the wings are a bolt-on, bolt-off car.
That's
a
right,
bolt-off item, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's it's a relatively easy job
Yeah.
to get. I mean, I say easy, it's easy for me because I just say, oh, Bob, can you just pop the wings off that? And one of the things that I am going to do, if not in this video, in a future video, I'd like to look at the process, something as simple as painting a front bumper or front PU. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, you paint a bumper for stone chips, 150 quid, and it's obviously a lot more involved than that, and I'd like people to go through the process with you and talk them through the process so they can realise what's actually involved. So we're probably going to do a couple of videos down here, and this is very much kind of the first of them. So we'll look at some of the aspects, and maybe even we'll look at areas on 911s that typically get corrosion. So if we get a 3.2 Carrera in at some stage, maybe that's having kidney bowls done, or we can point out
or even possibly one that's had fire damage,
or even possibly one that's had a little bit of fire damage, because that would be stripped.
Then we can see exactly what's behind.
We can see exactly, because there's nothing on it other than the shell, so that will be a handy car to look at. So windows out, and obviously again it means that there's no masking, so you don't have mask lines everywhere.
The worst thing we want to do is mask things like these rubbers up, and then over time paint starts flaking off, and then Henry will come back knocking on my door and asking me why paint's flaking off.
Moi? Always blame the paint shop, whatever happens. So windows out allows you to get in, and wings off, and obviously these seals here, we'll kind of replace seals as we go along and so on. Doors are coming off as well, are they?
Doors will come off so we can get access to the A-posts. When we paint the doors, we want to paint inside the doors.
Okay.
So. And
when you're repainting the car, do you generally paint the car in one hit of paint at the time, so to get sort of colour matching, or is it possible that you can paint sort of doors separately to the shell, or would you would you do the shell, the bonnet, the doors, the boot lid all in one go, or separately?
We would normally do a shell, doors and wings in one hit.
Okay.
Our booth is quite big. We've got a pretty big booth where we're quite fortunate where we can get all the parts in one go. So the shell will go in with the doors and the two front wings. And then we'll do another hit for the bonnet, bumpers, and the deck lid. And
because obviously one of the problems about painting cars is if you're a mechanic, and I'm not, is it denigrating, is that the word? I'm not putting down mechanics at all, but if I buy a brake disc, it comes and it looks exactly like the brake disc that is going to go on the car, and I unbolt one and I bolt another part on. When you buy paint, it doesn't come in a Porsche 911 shape, it comes in a tin. Right. And not only that, but you have your own mixing scheme. So you will actually mix up the paint for this colour. Yeah. And so obviously it's a case of making sure it's exactly the same for
That's right.
all the panels.
So we mix all our own paint down here. So the car will have a colour code. We'll put it into the computer. The computer will tell us what tinters, or it will basically give us a recipe for the colour.
Yeah.
So going back to that question of will you get the car in one go, will the paint match?
Yeah.
It will match because we're mixing the paint we can mix it in different batches and we'll know.
So you're like the Mary Berry of the paint world then, really, aren't you? You're cooking with your paint. So, yeah. And the other benefit, of course, because we're doing the whole car, this is a, whatever it is now, 30-year-old car, very nearly. Cars have paint. Everyone, whenever they buy a car off us, they'll come and look at a 30-year-old car and say, oh, is it original paint? Well, you and I both know that when a 911 is 18 months old and it goes back into the main dealers and they're reselling it, they'll generally paint the front PU, front bumper, maybe even flick into the wings to get rid of stone chips, because you have stone chips, you get marks, you get dents and so on, and people want their 911 to look beautiful. So the answer is yes, all old 911s have had paint work, essentially. And what you do find, of course, is if you paint an element of a car for a scratch or a dent, there's a possibility it's a different colour, and also it reacts over time, of course. So the benefit we've got here is by doing the whole car, we can make it all one colour with no question. whereas it must be quite hard for you in that you must have occasion where technically the paint code says one mix, but actually you have to tint to what's existing on the car when you're blending in. Let's say you're painting a rear quarter panel, it's got a scratch on there and you're blending into a door, and so you actually have to modify your mixture presumably.
Well, we're quite fortunate with the system that we use. Generally, they'll give us 2 or 3 different shades.
Okay.
When cars are manufactured, there's always going to be a slight variation from batch to batch.
So even amongst new cars, there may be
some new
okay.
batch of cars, a certain amount of batch will come out the factory line, painted in one batch.
Yeah.
Then another batch will be mixed, but when they're doing such vast quantities of mixing, there's always going to be a slight variation of a colour.
And so what do? Do you spray out a little test panel and...
We'll do a spray out card of the colour, match it to the car. Usually we've got a colour chip which is supplied to us by the manufacturer of our paints, and we'll match up to the car. If we're still in doubt, that's when we start going into doing spray out cards.
Okay.
So if we have to do a spray out card of 3 or 4 or 5 different shades at a time, then that's what the job takes.
And presumably it gets even more complicated in that if you've got an older car that's been painted, partially painted in at several stages, you've almost got to have that battle between, well, I can get the wing to match the door, but I can't get the wing to match the bonnet.
Yeah.
And it's not your fault, it's just that where it's been painted at various stages, you've got to decide how you're going to approach that. And
at that stage, that's where we've got to decide, do we start blending into the next panel to get our colour matching right? We will try and look for a panel that hasn't been painted on a car.
I mean, presumably the most common panel that hasn't been painted is always the roof.
It's usually the roof. So we will, if we've got a problem matching a colour around the car, we will then try and go to a panel that hasn't been painted, like you say.
So you almost use that as a reference, and then sometimes you may even have to say, look, this car's 3 colours, this we know is the correct colour, we're going to actually have to paint, or do you want us, presumably the customer's choice, do you want us to paint more to make it the same colour?
To do the job right, it would involve blending into X, Y and Z panel. Or sometimes not everyone has the depth of the pockets that we have to accommodate
and do the best you can. And poor people like my good self, for instance. Right. So now we haven't actually talked about the budget for this job, have we?
No.
I'll talk about that off camera because Bob and I need to have a little chat. I haven't got any money to do this yet, but don't worry,
Christmas is coming.
Christmas is coming.
So
yes.
Cash gifts only, please.
Thank you very much indeed for what a generous Christmas gift Bob has just given us. Thank you very much. The paint itself, back in the day, in 1904 when I started selling cars, you used to get cellulose paint. So you'd obviously paint the car, the cellulose evaporates or you bake it off and it becomes hard. Things have moved on, haven't they?
Yep, so things have moved on. So from cellulose it went to 2K.
And 2K is 2-pack, 2K?
2-pack. 2K generally means 2 components go into the mixture. So you usually have the paint and the hardener or the lacquer and the hardener. So that then changed around mid-90s to go from 2K high solids, which is pretty much what we're using now. And then around that sort of time it went to water-based.
Okay.
So from cellulose it's gone to solvent 2K and now gone on to water-based.
And the water-based, is that still a 2-component paint?
So the water-based is a single component.
Okay.
That's what we see the colour. That's the actual colour of the car.
Okay.
And then we let that dry and then put a 2K high solid clear coat lacquer.
Okay. And that's so essentially the painting on this car. There's going to be the primer layer or filler, base layer, Then you apply single coat of colour or multiple coats of colour?
It's multiple coats of colour. Usually it's about 3 to 4 coats.
Okay, and that when that's finished, and we'll see that in the process later on in a few weeks' time, but that will give us actually a matte finished car, no shine to it.
So that will give us a matte shine. but it's got no durability.
Yeah.
At that stage, it's got no durability.
Yeah.
We could get it outside and it will literally rub off like
Yeah.
that. Over the top of that, once that's flashed off, dried off,
Yeah.
then it's given 2 coats of clear, high solid lacquer.
And that lacquer that's a 2 component, so there's a catalyst in there, a hardener in there,
hardener,
and that will chemically harden.
Yeah.
And obviously the reason for the booth is twofold. A, for ventilation to make it clean when you're painting it, but then also you heat the car up, and the hotter it is, the quicker
So we need to get a panel temperature up to 60 degrees.
Okay.
And then keep that panel temperature for 30 minutes.
Okay.
35 minutes. And then that will completely harden.
And then that hardens the paint.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, it's pretty much cured paint.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
cellulose paint used to be, for weeks afterwards, it's still cured, and you'd often find sinkages would appear as it cured. And
So with cellulose back in the day, when people used to say, oh, it had 12 coats of paint.
yeah,
Cellulose you'd have to build up layer by layer by
Yeah.
layer, and then flat and polish all. Probably take off 3 layers of that
yeah.
to try and get the shine
Yeah,
back in again.
and the shine, we made a video on our ceramic coating, and we talked about the clear lacquer, where obviously you get micro scratches in there from buffing and haze marks and so on, and swirl marks. And it is that clear lacquer really that people, when they talk about the shine and the deep, the rich finish and the shine on a car, it's actually the clear lacquer they're referring to, isn't it?
It's the clear lacquer. It's the lacquer that gives you the depth of the shine and how deep you can polish that
Yeah.
to get a real good gloss out
Yes,
of it.
and so that's the gloss element. The colour is the base coat,
Yeah.
but that in itself, when it's applied, is a flat
That's
colour.
just a flat matte
Okay,
when it dries.
okay. So, talking specifics on this car then. So we're going to have the bumpers already off. Going to take the wings off. Going to take the doors off, and we're looking for. So we've got sort of paint defects. So we've got some cracking in the paint in the roof. We've got just marks and so on. And one of the things about these 964s, or the RS in particular, is you get no underseal on the car. And so one of the things you find, and particularly when you use sticky tyres, is your rear quarter panels, the rear wheels will kind of flick stuff up, and you get lots of outie dents where stone and grit sort of is thrown into the quarter panel and can actually create a dent. So we're going to have to take a few out of this where you've got outie dents. And obviously that will correct any paint defects. One of the things we're also going to try to do is to get this car put on a jig, and we'll cover that in a separate video because obviously we want to make sure it's a straight car. Your initial strip down so far, we've identified some of the bits we're going to change. So there's some of the panels we're going to change. Actually, all the rear bumper panels we're going to change. The centre section's the wrong one on this one because an owner at some point, who shall remain anonymous, when he was a younger man and less wise, might have damaged the rear bumper on the car and just put a standard Carrera 2 or Carrera 4 centre section because he might have had it lying around anyway and it was free, and he didn't want to pay the £350 or whatever for the RS Turbo, which they're now 600 and odd quid, so he should have done it. But anyway, so we're going to change some panels on there, and we will identify, presumably you'll get in touch and say, right, I found this, I found that, this has been damaged in the past, and we'll then have a list of parts, we'll change the parts. If you get instances where some parts are unobtainium now, you can't get them, presumably you then have to start fabricating bits every now and again and things like that.
Generally on these 964s, everything should be
Okay.
available from Porsche.
Because I was going to say, one of the benefits of this is, although it's quite a rare car being an RS, the bulk of the car is standard 964
Yeah.
Carrera 2, isn't it? So
Yeah.
everything's pretty much off. And
Pretty much
you
so,
find that even in the body world, that all the panels from Porsche pretty much all available and
Yeah,
everything.
but Porsche have a classic car division, so anything, they can pretty much get anything that's still on the road,
Yeah.
from early 912s, early 911s. You'll be surprised in the parts that they can
Yeah.
still get hold of.
And I think it's one of the real sort of benefits of Porsche from an owner point of view. There are so many marks that they do lovely cars, but even relatively new cars, you can't get parts for them. And it means that ownership is either hideously expensive because you have to have something made specifically, or you just kind of can't. You've got to almost modify the car. You've, you know, at the biggest extreme, you end up, you know, doing engine transplants or things like that. It's great knowing that you can get everything off the shelf, and it's pretty much sort of next day or within a couple of days, isn't it?
Generally, Porsche have all our parts in stock, whatever we need. But then we're quite fortunate. There are aftermarket repair sections. If, for instance, we don't want to put a new roof on, there are companies that will make us a repair section for just the bottom corner.
And that's because there's enough Porsches sold in the world that whatever problem you come across when you're repairing, people have bought the T-shirt, been down there before, and so companies realise that you need a repair section to go in there.
If there isn't anything available, we do have the facility to even make a repair section if we need to.
Yeah, but generally speaking, with Porsches, you
generally can get
them off the shelf. I mean, one of the things we were talking when we brought the car down, for instance, there's no engine in there at the moment, and the sound deadening. It's a bit old now. It's a little bit crispy and brittle, and you know, we're going to change that, for instance. And that's one of those parts that, you know, on some cars you'd think, crikey, where can I? It wouldn't be available, and yet, as you say, it's off the shelf.
It's off the shelf.
Yeah,
you can get all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, to people owning people are very protective of their paint, and it's a bit like a builder. When you get a builder in to do an extension, when you see them knocking everything out, you think, oh, you're creating dust, and you've got to go in and be kind of not afraid, and I wouldn't say brutal, because you're careful in what you do, but you know, you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. So as you say, you are taking components off, and to, you know, the paint finish, you know, you've got to, if you're painting this car, how far are we going to go down in terms of removing the paint that's on this car?
So on this particular car, yeah, we've noticed that we've got some crazing and some reaction going on in the roof.
Yeah.
So it only makes sense to go back down to bare metal to get a good foundation.
Yeah.
You can't build a house on dodgy foundations.
Yeah.
Same with paintwork. You cannot get a good finish unless you've got a good foundation.
So are we expecting to take the whole car down to metal, or some elements of it you may look at and think, actually, the paint's pretty sound there, so you'll sand back to a point? And
yeah, so we'll so there are some elements of this car which we'll look at while we're sanding. We'll see what the paint or what the panel's doing.
And do you find that as you're sanding through, if one layer of paint isn't bonded properly, it'll start breaking away, and at that point, as it gets thinner, you then see that it's...
That's right. So at that point, that's where we decide, right, do we go down to bare metal?
Yeah.
Or we make that decision at that point there.
Yeah.
So it's whether we paint strip the panel, like we know we're going to paint strip the roof.
Yeah.
We've seen that problem. It's there in front of us. Doing the wings or the bonnet, for instance, we'll have a look while we're sanding down. And
I mean, everyone will often say, "Oh, I had a bare metal respray," and I think, to me, I rightly or wrongly, I think you have to. It's horses for courses, you know. There's no point in wasting money and time if it doesn't need bare metaling.
That's right.
But if it does, it needs it.
Yeah, you're right. There are some shops that will just paint strip just for the sake of it, just to get the job out of it. But there's no real reason to actually paint strip.
Yeah.
You only paint strip, A, if you've got too many layers of paint on.
Yeah.
B, if the paint hasn't adhered to a layer underneath.
Yeah.
They're the real reasons.
And also, if it's an older car and you're wondering if there's corrosion and former repairs on there, in that instance, so your 3.2 Carrera, I mean, I know you've had that acid...
Sandblasted.
Sandblasted, have you? Okay. So, because it was an older car, you wanted to know exactly what was there. 964s, how do you find those for corrosion in terms of generally, how are they corrosion-wise?
Generally, they're pretty fine. We've done a few repairs on the front scuttle, bottom corners, the back scuttle. Other than that, they're generally
What about
fine.
in the rear light areas of 964s? I've seen some corrosion in there in the past where have you come across that where you've got
Yeah,
the light recesses?
yeah, so going into the rear quarter panels, the rear light recess where it butts into the rear chassis link,
Yeah.
they generally have a common problem
Yeah.
down there.
And it's the same thing, isn't it? It's wherever you've got muck that's going to get trapped and it stays wet and it over a period of time.
Over a period of time, it just depends on how well the car's kept. If you're going to jet wash and clean up within the wheel arches
Yeah.
and get rid of all that road salts, it's the road salts which actually cause a lot of the rust.
Yeah.
So if you can get a jet wash up, then just always.
I
give
mean,
that
we
a clean.
do notice often when people bring cars to us, or we see cars that have spent a lot of their life in Scotland, for instance, or where there's
By the coast.
Yeah, you by the coast or in Scotland where the roads get salt on them and they're treated. You do notice a difference in terms of corrosion, definitely.
There usually is a difference. You can tell. We've had cars come in here, and you can usually tell from the underneath of the car that where it's been kept in the country.
Yeah. Okay. Inside this, really, there's nothing particularly to do from a body point of view, is there? Because we're not expecting any big sort of corrosion areas. The only thing that we may do, and I haven't sprung it on you yet, but I'll tell you now, we might put a half cage in it. I talked earlier about not putting a full road cage in it because it's going to be road use, but I think we'll end up putting a half cage in. I think we're probably going to do a bolt-in cage, but that may mean that we have to put some strengthening panels where we bolt through, because on this car I don't think it's got rear. It's either the seatbelt mount still in the body shell on the outside edge, but so stuff like that is something that we may get a little bit involved in there. But and also with the glass out of the car, it'd be nice because we've just got a nice easy access to kind of get in everywhere. So good. I think that's probably a reasonable time to kind of cut the video, really. We're going to come back down to the body shop, so this is kind of the first visit we're going to come down here, and in subsequent visits we may look at some general sort of bits in terms of like bumper painting, or we may look in the booth or see where we go from there. So but yeah, as I say, slightly different. We're going to be using this to travel around a few of the experts that we use, and hopefully you found that interesting. If you've got any questions, by all means post them up, and I can kind of ask Bob, and just if you've got anything you want to know, anything. I mean, he's a man of much wealth and knowledge, and so pretty much anything. What else do? You do painting, and I don't know, what hobbies do you do? I don't know.
My hobbies are painting.
So basically he's painting. He's really good on painting of cars. Anything other than that, he's struggling a little bit. Nick, his brother, does yoga. He's a yoga instructor of whatever type of yoga. So he can answer questions. We don't.
We use Nick to get into the really hard to get to areas.
Yeah, he climbs in, but Bob and I are non-yoga people. We wear our yoga on the inside, not the outside. Anyway, thanks for watching. Got any questions, post them up. In the meantime, I'm Henry. We're 911 Virgin, the Porsche vehicle in Uxbridge. Many thanks for watching. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you, Henry.
Say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.
We'll see you later. Bye-bye.